What's up, everybody? This is Carlos from Artists and Social Club. Thank you for joining ASC Online today. We have a very, very special guest, lead character artist, founder of the Silver Drawing Academy. He's responsible for some of the most iconic characters like Kim Possible, Danny Phantom. He's worked on The Cleveland Show, Penguins of Madagascar, Fairly Odd Parents, and the list goes on and on. Not only has he created a lot of iconic characters, but he's also worked with some really fun companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, Universal, Nickelodeon, and again, the list goes on and on. Welcome, Stephen Sliver.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited to be here with you, man. And I've been following you for a long time, and I'm really excited to have you on here. And and just kind of share. We're going to share a little bit about our character design experience, our time in the industry, and love to get some insights from you for some of the students and artists out there that are really in need of some insights, some industry insights. And
Perfect.
excited to have you, man.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I admire about the work that you've done is that when you started your career, you started it in the amusement park, you know what I mean, and doing caricatures and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know there's a lot of students that are into caricatures, and I have friends that are also caricature artists and stuff too. But what led you to that? What got you interested in the caricature world?
Yeah, absolutely. So it first started off for me in high school, and it was Mad Magazine, which was the catalyst. My favorite artists, Mort Drucker and Jack Davis. Al Hirschfeld didn't draw for Mad Magazine, but he was another great caricature artist that I really admired. And that's kind of like what started me on my journey in high school. So I was always drawing caricatures of people. I didn't, I wasn't great at it by any means. And then when I left high school, I went to junior college. I was there for the first year. I was just like taking a figure drawing class. And
Mm.
it wasn't really an art college or anything like that. And a friend of mine in the class said, "Hey, SeaWorld in San Diego is
Oh,
they're
nice.
looking for caricature artists." And I was in San Diego at the time. And I thought, well, that sounds really cool. And I just actually got to go back because I just remembered, preface it by when I graduated from high school, my parents I have a twin brother, took my twin brother and I to Las Vegas. We were staying at the Excalibur Hotel, and I
Mm.
saw caricature artists drawing, and I just stayed by them the whole time. I was fascinated. There were about five of them, and I was just watching them the whole time. I eventually convinced them to sell me their drawing manual,
Oh,
which
wow.
usually they didn't do unless you were work for them. But they just saw this kid is so interested.
Mm.
Hey, go back home, learn this, and keep in contact with us. And I actually did, and they actually offered me a job to go to Las Vegas and do caricatures there. But at the same time, I had applied to SeaWorld in San Diego, and I thought, I'd rather stay in San Diego. And I ended up getting the job
Mm.
doing caricatures there, and they started to train me to do live caricatures. Doing live caricatures, you got to draw caricatures within about 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, and then we were airbrushing them too for the color. And
Mm.
that's where I got my experience into caricature at the age of 18. And it changed my life. It was such a catalyst to everything that I do. And even today, I've just been working on caricatures today because I still do a lot of caricature. But that eventually led to people saying, "Hey, I got a party. Can you draw at the parties?" And I
Mm.
eventually started doing private parties. Eventually got some agents in San Francisco, entertainment agents who do party planning,
Oh,
and
wow.
they would book me for events. And that was my whole career and my whole life. And I would just travel from place to place doing caricatures. I was living in different states. I drew at the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. I was living in Minneapolis drawing caricatures. I was in Kansas City, and I was just going all over the place working in different theme parks. And then during Christmas time, I would set up at shopping malls around where I live for
Mm.
November and December. And I was just all in and made a great living. I too encourage a lot of my students just to learn to do caricature, learn how to do caricature quickly, and
Mm.
it will help you when you want to do character design. But that was my entryway into doing caricatures.
Now that book that they gave you, the book that they weren't supposed to, or the one that like
Right.
the guide, is that something that is like standard for all caricature artists when they start out, or do they start off with their like like a class or something? Do you take a course for that, or is it really on a manual?
Yeah, it's usually just depends on the company that you're working
Mm,
for. The person who runs the company may have their own manual that they've put together, and that's what this was. It was a manual. The guy that it was a guy by the name of Steve Fozen, and he really started the whole theme park industry of caricatures
wow.
many years ago. And a lot of the people that he was actually there at the time, but a lot of people who worked for him ended up starting their own companies and going and setting up at different theme parks that he wasn't at. Like he was probably in about 20 to 30 different theme parks,
Wow.
just all over the place. So he had his manual that he would use to give to his artists to train them. And then when I worked for the company in San Diego, they were a different company. They used to work for Fazen many years ago, but they created their own drawing manual that they
Mm,
would give to the artists just to train you. Yeah.
wow. Now, when you stopped working for theme park and you started working with like you building your portfolio, building your body of work, did you use some of those skills from the manual or from just your experience caricaturing, seeing a lot of people's facial expressions? Because I'm sure you've seen a lot of different shapes of heads, faces,
Sure.
expressions, and whatnot, right? To develop characters like Danny Phantom or Kim Possible or any of the characters that are within the roster of that particular IP. Did you use a lot of that from that, or did you just start from scratch and develop something fresh for that, or did you pull from
No,
experience?
yeah, it all comes from that. You know, it was all that experience and to me, caricature and character design are really one and the same. It's all
Mm,
just about spacing, manipulation of shape, and
mm,
that's what you're doing as a character designer. So all that experience that I gained from doing these quick live caricatures absolutely came into my character design work and my portfolio when I first submitted it to Warner Brothers,
mm.
where I first got hired was just full of caricatures and full of figure drawing, full of sketchbook drawing, and that's all I had because I never went to school. I dropped out of the school that I was going to. Initially, it was called Palomar College, which was just a community college, and I dropped out of that because I was having to do all the academic, and I
Mm.
just couldn't hang. I just couldn't do it. My mind was all into art, so that's what I just dropped out of school. That yeah, I was around 18 years old, and then just went full time into doing the caricatures. But that skill set absolutely gave me the tools that I needed to make me the character designer that I became. Without a doubt, I would have never, I think, been able to do what I've done in the industry without that experience for sure.
And that's amazing because I remember I've been following your work since like what early 2000s when you had released the Clerks, the Clerks
Hmm.
animated series. When I first saw that, I was I was hooked right away with that style because I think not only was I a fan of Kevin Smith's work at the time because I was into Mallrats and all the Clerks and Chasing Amy and all that, but I think that when you took those characters into like this almost like Saturday morning cartoon kind of way, it really resonated with me because I really felt like you had this very angular, everything was very, had a cool style to it. It wasn't just like your typical rounded characters that are just
Sure.
very cool style to the point where, I had bought the figures for
Oh
this
yeah.
well. And I mean, I had friends of mine that bought the figures and we collect them because again, they had just this cool, unique style.
Yeah.
And I've never thought that that was a thing where you could bring a real person into this kind of world, you know what I mean? And you typically see like Bugs Bunny where he isn't a real person.
Right.
Yosemite Sam, they're not real people. But when you bring Silent Bob and Jay and you put them in this very cool looking style and it just you hit every single part of their character archetypes, you know what I mean? And I think that kind of opened up my mind to like really what character design was really about when I first saw that. And again, I still didn't get immersed into that. I just really felt like, what is this? And at the
Yeah.
time I was working on vehicle design, so that wasn't even my world, but I was just fascinated with just the fact that someone out there was able to make Jay and Silent Bob look so cool like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the dynamic that I kind of segueing into my next question to you is, finding a style. I think with a lot of students that I run into, um, you know, a lot of times when we address style, it's almost subjective sometimes, you know what I mean? And it could get, like, for me, at least personally, like I sometimes I get a little subjective sometimes when I talk to a student about a certain style. Like for me, I see a lot of, I don't know how it is with your students, but I see a lot of anime in their portfolios, a
Yeah.
lot of anime, tons
Yeah.
of it. Miyazaki, especially, a lot of Spirited Away, a lot of, Hunter x Hunter, and you're starting to see a lot of, anime stuff. um I personally don't like encourage too much of that. I don't know how you feel about that. And I really would love to get your take on that, because a lot of students would love to hear how studios look at, those type of things. Is it very amateur? Is it the amateur portfolio? Is it the student portfolio? I mean, because you see a lot of that in just that particular group, which is the
Yeah.
either the startup guys that are just starting out in the industry, students, and novice that are just trying art for the first time or whatever. They go right to anime, and I think that they build their first foundations on that. And again, I'm guilty. I was a hunter, vampire hunter D. Uh,
Okay.
I was a Ghost in the Shell guy, Akira. So I was into those type of mangas, and it does it did play a role in my creative upbringing, but it wasn't something that I drew all the time. Where people would be like, "Oh, he just draws that," you know.
Right.
So how do you, or what would you recommend to students when you see anime or that type of work in the portfolio? Like, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think about that going into this industry?
Yeah, I'm much like you. I try to encourage students and to discourage that because it is looked at upon like student, amateurish. And it's great, if you want to, you're influenced by it, it's something that you just want to draw, do it, have fun with it. But building a portfolio around that just screams amateur. It's not because it's not bad artwork, but it's just oftentimes falling into that one style. And unless that studio is actually doing that,
Hmm.
then it's not going to benefit you. Maybe if, when Nickelodeon was doing Avatar and things
Sure,
like that, and your portfolio was strongly based around that,
sure,
well,
sure,
that
sure.
can be in your favor, right? But otherwise, look at all the other shows that are out there, they just don't have that sense
Mm.
about them. And I think it can destroy you. So you got to really make sure that you're just being as diversified as possible and playing around with a lot of different styles. Don't just hone in on that style, hone in on a bunch of other different styles. And then you're going to start to develop your thing. The biggest thing in animation to get an animation job is you have to be a chameleon. You have to be versatile. You're going to have to, and that's the biggest reason why people don't get accepted into certain roles because their portfolio doesn't match the needs of the show style. And if
Yeah.
they don't get that initial image like, okay, I think that artist can do it, then you're kind of done for. But yeah, I highly discourage it, and sometimes it's very hard for people to hear, especially the younger students.
Yeah.
Every time I say it, I always tell people, listen, I know, guys, what I'm about to say, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be
It's
your
true.
favorite. You
True.
know what, you don't want to hear this, but here's the reality. And it's just, I
Right.
just want you to think about this, because if you want to get into animation, you have to do this. Now, if you just say, I don't have the desire to get into animation and I just want to produce my own comics, my own books, my own prints, and you're willing to set up at conventions and do that, have a Patreon, do YouTube channel, and that's the style you do, have at it. And you'll find your audience. But if your intention is to get a job at an animation studio, that's not in Japan, or an Asian country, then you're not in luck. And
Right.
I've had friends, Japanese friends, and they've told me, and they do manga and anime, and they say, no, they don't hire Americans to do that. It's all Japanese. There's like one Italian guy that he was mentioning. This one manga con guy was saying just one Italian guy that was doing it, but you don't want to. They're not going to hire you to do that. You'd have to do it independently yourself.
That's right. That's right. Now, I think you nailed it when you talked about like how the amateur part of it. It just, to me, it just seems like a lot of students when they get into their portfolio, it's like their go-to. It's like they feel like that's something that they can go towards. And I think that when I was trying to go to Blizzard Studios, I tried my best to go there. That's a different story for another time. But I think that I literally spent almost a good 4 years trying to get that portfolio to look like that
Mm,
studio,
mm,
where I actually lost myself and my style into that style of studio. You know what I mean? Because I was recommended by that studio that if you're going to go after that particular studio, you need to have that particular style. So I think a lot of my design sense and design language was revolving around that a lot. You know what I mean?
right.
So yeah, that's great to hear that other people are also discouraging that, because it does happen a lot, and it's like it's
Yes.
unfortunate. And but I really like to help students understand that they need to uh or even not so much students but also the professors to
Yeah.
be responsible and share with them that this isn't the way to go. And I've seen some schools that have encouraged
Right.
anime in their curriculum or in their senior projects to, to make it hey, we're going to do Miyazaki this year and
Right.
you're going to
Right.
do a Miyazaki. And it's like, why would you do that to them? Like, this is their last hoorah before they
Yeah.
walk out
Yeah.
the door, and you're going to send them out with Miyazaki when they're not applying for a Miyazaki job.
Right. Right.
So I
And they
think
wouldn't get hired anyway. You know, again, if they're not Japanese,
yes,
they're not going to get hired anyway.
that's right.
So,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, so I think so from a cartoonist perspective or a character design perspective, how do you evolve from that? Like when you design one character for such a while, how do you transition to something different that you can kind of, put in your arsenal of characters or art styles? How do you change it up?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things to do when you're learning and you're growing is to make sure not be afraid of tracing and not
Mm,
be afraid to learn and copy from other artists. And that's what I was doing all the time when I was copying from Mad Magazine and when I was studying Frank Frazetta and I was looking at Norman Rockwell and I was studying all these different artists and just learning. You start to learn. It's very important you're learning how to draw. You start to build up the draftsmanship aspect, but also you start to realize that everything's kind of built off of shape and everything's built off of structure and forms and learning those things. And then you can just apply that to really any style. And now it's just a matter of, well, okay, well, this style is that the heads are a little bigger. You know, maybe we draw hands bigger. Maybe we draw hands round. Maybe we draw fingers square. And again, just being open to that influence. And it's something that just really just taking a page from what Disney always did was anytime they were doing their own feature films, they always had that artist inspiration. Like,
mm,
hey, we're going to look at Al Hirschfeld to do Aladdin. We're going to look at
mm,
Gerald Scarfe for doing Hercules. We're going to look at this artist. And
mm,
it's not that you're taking their exact style, but you're pulling ideas. And that's how you can start to evolve and build new styles when we are kind of like our own AI machines, right? With inside our head.
yes,
We've
right.
got all this information and we can just start to pull. And that's what we're doing. We're like, God, I really love the way that artist approaches drawing hair. That's an influence. I'm going to throw that
Mm,
in the mix. And it's this big old pot that you're stirring with all these influences because you've been drawing and copying and studying for so long. And eventually you can start to form your own voice.
mm,
But again, once you're on a production, any sort of production, you have to meet the needs of that production style. So having that ability to really draw and break down character shapes and shape language and
yeah.
line work and understand all those rules, you're going to be able to adapt to any sort of style from SpongeBob to Kim Possible to Danny Phantom to whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You can start to just pull all that and vary that style.
Yeah, and that's important too, because I remember I was working on a project just not too long ago, and I was working on Haunted Mansion stuff,
Mm,
and I took a deep dive to one of my favorite Disney artists is what's his name, Mark Davis.
oh yeah,
Mark
yeah,
Davis is, man, his involvement with the park and just his animation, just
brilliant.
I was just
Yeah,
amazing. So I took a page off of his work as well, just to kind of talk about caricatures. I mean, he had beautiful face
yes,
expressions, and so looking at these masters in what they do is incredible, and it has influenced my work as well. So I think, looking at J.C. Leyendecker and John Singer Sargent in the classic masters, I think Jerome and all his lighting and all his dramatic stuff. I think a lot of
yeah,
that. I mean, I pulled from a lot of different
yeah.
people. And I think that that's kind of what I've encouraged a lot of people to do too is like just pull from places that you are inspired by, because I think
Yep.
it's easier to adapt something that inspired you, because then you can translate it in the way you digested it,
Yeah.
and it's easier to to pull it out. And so I think with Leyendecker, I think I really gravitated towards his angular, like his shading
Yeah.
style was just such an
Yeah.
amazing way that he did folds on clothes, and just the chiselness
Oh
of
yeah.
the renders, and it was so incredible. I
Amazing.
think and again, you mentioned Norman Rockwell is like same exact thing, except he softened everything up a little bit, but
Yeah.
still gave you that really stylized look in the caricature form, which is
Yes. Yeah.
cool. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think,
JC Leyendecker was a huge influence on me for that. Just again, just the shapes and the way he would approach, again, like you mentioned, the angles or highlights and hair or whatever it may be
yeah.
was just so like chunky and fun. And again, that transitioning that into line work, I'm not a painter. I
Mm.
rely on my line but I was still able to pull from aspects of JC Leyendecker and help it influence my work for sure.
So as far as animators, what animators do you feel you've kind of drawn from? Because your style is so, like, I can recognize your style a million miles away. Like your style is so unique. And I think for a lot of animators, it's really hard to tell who's who. But I think when you develop such a unique style, I think it 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 does resonate with a lot of people, because they know that it's different. It actually stands out from the rest. And I think, like, did you was Lion Decker or the Masters the ones that actually influenced you in that
Yeah,
style, or
yeah,
was it some other
absolutely.
animators?
Yeah, no, really was. Yeah, well, yeah, it wasn't so much the animators because the animators, when you're looking at Mark Davis or Frank and Ollie and all the Nine Old Men and all those great just the renaissance of all that really, and that's actually the name of Mark Davis's book, I think, is Renaissance. But just looking at all their work was, again, it's just fun. It's the life, the movement. I
Mm.
think of guys like Glenn Keane and
Oh,
Eric
yeah.
Goldberg and all these guys. Again, there's so much life and energy, and that's what I love and appreciate when I look at that. But then it was illustration for me that was where my true background
Mm,
was really came from just looking at illustrators because
mm.
like I mentioned, I never went to art school. I didn't study animation. I kind of fell into this. I had no idea I was going this direction in my life. It just happened that way. And I was just pulling from that really. And that's, I think, why it was different. Because while everyone was either they were going to the Cal Arts and they were going to this school and that school or art center and they have that certain look or certain thing, I was coming as an outsider.
Mm.
That's just like I'm an illustrator trying to do character design, but it's much like when you get guys like Peter DeSev and
Mm.
phenomenal illustrator, right, bringing his take into animation. He gets to just keep his own style. Or Carter Goodrich, another brilliant illustrator who came from illustration into character design. So that's why when you look at those guys, they're very unique in their way and their approach that they do artwork was comes from that illustration side. I really feel.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think there's I was going to tell you earlier that, like, there's a couple of things that I think now I can add more to our list, that of things that you and I have in common, which is character art, these awesome hats,
Yeah.
and teaching. And but also now I can add the fact that we both didn't we weren't trained in school. Like,
Yeah.
I went to art center for, I think it was like 2 semesters, somewhere around there, 2 3 semesters. I couldn't afford it. It was just
Yeah.
way too expensive for my
Yeah.
parents, and
Yeah.
I was just not, I was not cut out for that. It was just not. And so I went to illustrate. I went there for illustration, but I learned more from the Korean kids in the cafeteria that were drawing robots and monsters. And I think that's important. Like, I think that's something that I would love to know from you, is like, not going to school. There's a lot of kids that don't have the means to go to school. Like we didn't have the means
Yeah.
for,
It's expensive.
so
Yeah.
what would you recommend to a student that can't afford school and is discouraged from becoming something because he doesn't go to school? Is school relevant in our industry?
Yeah, it's really not. Your portfolio is what represents you. That's the
Okay.
bottom line. No one cares about your diploma. No one even cares about your resume, to be honest with you. And even on a recruiter, when I was recruiting at Disney, same thing. We just didn't. The resume was more just one of those formalities. You
Formality,
got
yeah.
to have it, but again, you're not being judged by that. It all comes down to your work, and I always knew that. So when I actually dropped out of just the community college I was going to, when I told my parents that. I knew at that point, and I remember saying, I'm not going to be hired for my degree as an artist. I'm going to be hired for the content of my work, is how I'm going to get to that next level. So I
Yeah.
got to get good at drawing. And that's why I decided I got to start professionally and start out this way and get this experience. But it's not. And now what students can do, people are learning. They, again, just, I think it's very helpful to decide. The sooner you decide kind of what you want to be and what you want to do, the better, just because you can start really gathering all that information. If you decide, well, I want to just be a background layout artist and I love environments, well, then stick with environments and do all that for now. You know, again, you can always change things. Nothing's a life
Right.
sentence
Right.
unless you
Right.
commit a horrible crime. But the thing that you're going to do is just say, hey, I want to be a character designer. I want to do this. And then just start immersing yourself with whatever books you can find, whatever online schools, because to me, that's almost like the way to go about it. Now, you find people who are in the field doing what they do, and they become those are the experts, and you can learn from them. And you find and you go directly to them as and hone in and just focus. If you say, I don't want to spend $40,000 a
Mhm.
year, but I can spend just a little bit of money, but learn from the best and from professionals. That's how you go about it. And just getting pulling those resources and books and studying. You got to just have the discipline. And I think it's helpful if you have friends that are just as disciplined as you are, because then you can go out and draw with them. Hey, let's go to figure drawing today. Let's
Yep.
go sketch at the coffee
Yep.
shop this week. And having that backup can really help.
That's it. That's exactly it. And I think again, you've nailed it. I think that's important because a lot of times when students are like, in schools and they're not being educated properly for the field they're going into,
Yeah,
that's exactly the right advice. I think it's important for people to understand that it's not necessarily the paper that gets you the job. It's
yeah,
the influences that you've had in that field you're trying to get into. Like for example, like I tell a lot of students that if you're aiming to be an illustrator, find out what type of illustrator you want to be
exactly.
and
Yeah,
surround yourself with that type of illustrative either environments or
yeah,
information. Like when I was going to when I was going to go to Blizzard, I said to myself, I want to go to Blizzard. So I inform myself about every single thing about Blizzard style, what artists are working there. I actually friended a lot of them. They were good friends of mine. We drew together. There was a lot of things that I immersed myself in that environment. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And I think
yeah,
it wasn't necessarily that I went to school for painting, but I actually surrounded myself, like you said, with the right people, and the
yeah,
right environment can really get you there. And I think that's great advice. I think that's
yeah,
exactly how it
absolutely.
should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also too, like the uh the Silver Drawing Academy,
Hmm.
that to me is super important because I think it really it's one of those schools that I feel it's honed in. You know what I mean? Everything is
Yeah,
honed in and it gives you the core of what you need for that specific, genre. And I think whether it's Brainstorm School or Nomen or any of those specific, like the Watts Atelier in San Diego, like
yeah,
all these schools that are prepping the right students for the right careers, I think is super important. I think, and I don't want to name any schools, but I think some of the schools that some of those kids that I run into, I'm sure you run into them. Um, I feel so bad for some of these students that are in these
yeah,
particular schools because they're just being led astray a little bit here, and I
yeah,
and I and I wish they understood exactly the importance of schools like the Silver Academy, the Drawing Academy, and like the Nomans and stuff that are very like laser focused on
yeah,
specifics. You know what I mean? And having instructors like yourself that understand the ins and outs. And I think you've been
yes,
there, you've been around the block, you know what doesn't work, you know what works, and I think
yeah,
that's where I wish more students would pay attention. But I think, like you said earlier, like sometimes sometimes parents don't understand that. And
Yes.
I've run
Yeah.
into students where they're like, well, my dad wants me to get a degree and
Yeah.
my dad wants me to do this and he's paying for it, but I just want to, and I'm not happy here. And I hear that more than I can tell you. It's
I
just,
know.
that is,
Because they think the degree, again,
yeah,
this is one of those things where, and it's part of that security. You just need something to fall back on. For me, I had nothing to fall back on. It was
mm,
just, it was
this
this.
is
There
good.
was nothing
That's
else
good.
I was going to land on. But you reminded me of just a story of a young artist who had reached out to me and just asked my opinion. He said, listen, I'm going to school right now. I got a job offer to work at an animation studio. Do you think I should stay in school or drop out for now and take the job? I said, take the job.
It's the
You're going to
job.
get all the experience in the world. He
Yep.
ended up contacting me a few months later and telling me how pissed off his dad was at me and everything, his parents, and that his dad actually called up the studio and had them fire his son and said his son can no longer work there. He has to go back to school, and made him go back to school. And again, that was a horrible mistake. I don't know where the kid is now these days, but that sort of mindset is just brutal. If you can get work experience, take the work experience, because you're going
100%.
to meet your mentors, you're going to make connections, like things are going to happen. You can always go back to school if that's important for you. And I know there's some schools that if you wanted to teach at the school and be a professor in art, yeah, they want you to have the degree. There's been a few schools that have asked me, would I go and teach at their school? And then they find out that I don't have a degree and they go, oh,
Yeah.
shoot, we can't hire you. And it's the crazy that they're all my experience and
Yeah.
everything. But the way these schools are set up, oh my God, we can't hire you because you don't have a degree.
Yeah.
So there was really only one choice for me, and that was to start my own school. If I can't work for their school, I'm
That's good.
starting my own, and
Yeah.
that's my mindset. That's how I think. If someone doesn't give you that opportunity,
Yeah.
hey, don't wait around for other people to give you opportunities. Make your own
No, that's
opportunities
it,
and
brother.
go out there and do it on your own. And that's very important.
That's exactly how the Artisan Social Club started. You know what I mean? And not being able to have a place to draw because there's a cliques of artists that don't let you sit at these tables. I've
Nice.
I started the Artisan Social Club because of that, and I wanted everybody to have that opportunity to draw with industry artists and professionals, like I wasn't able to at that time.
That's
And I'm
great.
and I'm glad. So, tell me a little bit more about your endeavors in the academy. Like, what exactly? How did that come about? What did you end up doing with that?
Yeah, I was like, I had actually I was very fortunate to meet my heroes, and those were like Jack Davis and Mort Drucker, and actually got to make a documentary. Mort Drucker gave me permission to go and spend a week at his house, and I filmed a documentary of him that you can find on Vimeo. And it was something that I realized there's so many of these artists that there is no video footage of them, that all
Mhm.
this stuff, they got their
Mhm.
books and stuff, and how, sad it is when these guys pass away that
Mhm.
all that knowledge is gone. And
Yeah.
I realize the importance of that. And even just for myself, I go, I'm doing books, but I think it would be important to take my knowledge and record it and
Mhm.
archive it and have something there. And that was a catalyst. And then for a long time, I was teaching online through with schoolism, doing
Oh,
that, and I had just a lot of ideas of things that I just kind of wanted to do for myself and structure it. And
mm,
it just kind of came to the time where it was going to be just do it myself. I got to just step away from teaching for other people
yeah.
and working on other platforms,
Yeah.
and just do it my way, because I had a vision of what I wanted to do. And that vision was to really not only be a school that was just really honed in and focused on a specific area, and
Mm,
that didn't have multiple teachers and multiple things. It's just like, hey, if you're interested in this area, which
mm,
was really character
yeah.
design, drawing, but even the business of art, right, which is something that's not discussed or covered in a lot of schools, to where I've done so many things in my life, and I've been a business owner and entrepreneur my whole life since the age of 18. I've done so many things, from app building to book publishing to selling conventions to, I mean, I've been doing so many things that I can share this knowledge. And that's what I wanted Silver Jordan Academy to be, was this place where you can gain this knowledge, but also just meet up with me. Where a lot of the schools, there was just, here's the videos, watch the videos, and you kind of get left to fend for yourself, where
Yeah,
I
that's
meet with
it.
my students all the
Yeah,
time.
that's
We
cool.
draw together. You can ask me questions. You have direct connection with me
Mhm.
as a student of my school. And this is what I spend a lot of time just training artists, just how to start their own businesses and how to think and get that mindset and set up your own intellectual properties, develop your own intellectual properties. Don't be that artist that just has to wait in line just to get
Mm.
hired by someone else. And that's really what the heart of the school really is about. And that's I really love it. I got over 400 video lessons. They're all under 5 minutes long. That
Mm.
was another thing, bite size. I'm very ADHD. I'm dyslexic. I'm all over the place, and it's very hard for me to concentrate. And it's why I failed in school all my years, and I just couldn't hack it. And I wanted just to create something to that with these little bite-sized videos that people, hey, spend 5 minutes a day. You don't need to spend 5 hours a day.
Right,
You can
that's
spend
right.
5 hours a day. As long as you're doing that every day, you're going to keep improving and getting better. And through these years, I've seen so many of my students just grow into, exponentially, where they're lead designers of
Mm.
studios at companies now. My students have gone on to start their own franchises, intellectual properties, just creating their own businesses and doing stuff like that. And that's
Right.
to me what it's all about. That's where I love it now, and I realize that's my purpose in life. My purpose isn't in life isn't just to work for another studio and be a production designer. My whole purpose now is I'm all in on teaching and education and spreading that knowledge. And for me, it's the most fulfilling. It gives me the most satisfaction. It gets me out of bed every day. And that's, I do it because I just love it, and I see the results, and that's even more impactful for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that story, Stephen. Like I said, to me, what resonates too is the fact that you're teaching about business and education, not just art education, but business
Yeah,
education, which is something that a lot of artists, I mean, some artists, some of the students that I've run into, I'm sure you do the same every day, is none of them don't even know how to invoice.
sure. Yeah, right.
And
Yeah,
so, I mean,
absolutely.
it's just a
Little
sad thing
things.
because yeah, you go to school and you go through all these 4 years and then you don't even know how to put an invoice together. You don't know how to write a contract. You don't know how to stay true to or even put value in your work. I think that's
Yeah.
great you're doing that for
You
these.
don't know how to you don't know how to negotiate. You don't
Exactly.
know how to ask for the price that you
Yeah.
want. All these things that big fears that artists have. And it's interesting. I I have a mentorship program where, besides the teaching, I meet with artists that just want to meet with me for 30 minutes. I go over their portfolio. They don't have to be a member of the academy, and I go over their work and I help them, give them career advice and help them move them in the right direction. And one of the people I was mentoring yesterday, she said her stuff was really great, but she says that I'm so scared about money and talking about it and dealing with it that I just don't do it. And this is why I don't want to go into that career. I just want to draw for myself. I don't want to work for anyone because I'm freaked out about it, and all these mental blocks that a lot of artists have on themselves. And she says, I was at a convention, I was doing commissions, and I was just charging $5 because I'm so free. And it's just like, you can't do that. It's just, so
Wow.
by educating yourself and getting comfortable with all this thing is going to move you into where it is that you want to go. Because what's our dream? To make a life and a living as an artist. That's what we all want to do. We
Yeah.
want to make a life and a living as an artist, be able to support our loved ones,
Yeah.
family, and just do this art. And I think it's a very important thing to learn that business side of it, so you're not getting taken advantage of. People
Right.
aren't screwing you
That's
left
right.
and right, which people do a lot of the time, right? They know, oh, you're just a student, you're just this, and they take advantage of them. And I just try to stop that madness from happening.
Good. Yeah. And I think, the important thing too is like giving them the value. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think
yeah,
valuing yourself and your work. I think because then it devalues our industry. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I remember now when you were mentioning that, I just remember that I went to one of these talks that Neville Page had, and Neville on stage he had like a room full of tons of students, new artists, young artists. I was in the back with a few of my artist friends. We were in the back just because we were just there to hang out. But and Neville asked this question. He said, "How many of you, if George Lucas walked into the room right now and said, how many of you guys want to work on the next Star Wars movie with me? But I don't pay though. How many of you guys will come and work for me? Literally the entire room lifted their hands, all of them. And we sat in the back like, that was a
Yeah.
shocker. But then he said, that is the wrong answer
Yeah.
because you just immediately devalue the entire industry right now
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
giving George Lucas free work.
Yeah.
Because then everybody who worked really hard to get
Yeah.
an established, their established portfolio, now you devalue their value because you do it for free, and now they're gonna, you just devalued it. It's like a surgeon, a brain surgeon is gonna say, "Hey, I'll do your brain surgery for free," and the other surgeons are like, "No, it's gonna cost you $100,000."
Yeah. Yeah.
Guess who you're gonna want to go with? And it's like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
no surgeon does that. No surgeon's gonna tell you, "I'll give you a discount if you come with
Yeah.
me."
And no one does. No business does. Business will give coupons and things like that, but no one's giving you, for you not walking into a restaurant and just saying, "Hey, I'll eat all that," or just, "Hey, can I try that and eat the whole meal? And
Yes.
if I like it,
Yes.
then I'll pay you."
Yeah.
Maybe it's just this sort of
Yeah.
mentality, but
Right.
this unfortunately that I think we do have to always, all the professionals, we
Yeah.
always need to keep talking about this and making sure that these
Right.
young up and comers are valuing themselves, especially with AI coming. You got to
100%.
be even more, assertive in
100%.
that area. Yeah.
100%. And I think that's the important part about what you and I are both doing for this industry is the fact that we're educating that area
Yeah.
because it needs to be talked about. I think it needs to be
Absolutely.
addressed, not only the AI part of it, but also the business side of it. I think a lot of
Yes.
students don't have that type of conversation. And I think it's a scary conversation because they don't want to miss out. They're hungry
Yes.
artists. They
Right.
are
Yep.
starving. They don't have connections. But one of the key things, and I'll start ending this up with this, is like, how important is network? Can you talk a little bit about networking?
Yeah, I think it's just vital because it's where you just start to make relationships. And networking isn't just about getting someone's business card.
Right.
Networking is about forming a relationship with people or knowing about someone, what that person does and just having that
That's
communication.
right. That's
And the
right.
more you can just kind of do that and start to get into people's just awareness of what it is that you do. This is how it happens. Next time a job comes about and you're not able to do it or it doesn't follow in your suit of what you do, which I get that a lot. I get random people reaching out. They see that I'm an artist and they want me to do something specific, but it's like, it's just not my bag. It's not what I really do or enjoy doing. But now if I've networked and met other artists, I go, oh, but I do know someone else that I can refer you to. It's those little connections. So the more you kind of put yourself in front of people, and it's another reason why I say whenever I do talks, and especially on Zoom, because once the whole Zoom and all that thing came, about, and I do a talk to students from other schools or whatever it may be, and they have their cameras off. And it's like I don't see their face. To me, that's part of networking is you just showing your face because
Yeah.
that don't expect me to know who you are when you come up to me at a convention and
I
go,
take it
"Hey,
back.
remember me? I was in the thing." No, I
Yeah.
don't.
No.
I'm not going to remember
Yeah, that's
names,
right. That's right.
but I'll remember a face.
Sure.
More likely. And I think those little things are so important. And networking is a huge aspect of this. You got to just keep getting out there, keep showing up, go to gallery shows,
Yeah.
you hear a talk about something, show up to that, just whatever it may be, show up is the most important thing. And that eventually, you don't know just what's going to happen. You don't know who you're going to meet, how it's going to happen. I remember one time I was at a gallery show and a great animator, his name's Tom Cito, who has been in animation for many years, was at Disney Feature, worked on just a lot of all the big projects, doing what he was doing. But he was at that gallery show and said, "Hey, Stephen," and I didn't know him that well. I knew of him, he was a pretty well known guy. I knew of him. He's go, "Hey, Stephen, I'm going to be directing this project for PBS and I'm looking for a character designer. I was wondering, would you be interested in maybe taking a stab at doing some development artwork for us?"
Mm.
So just me showing up
Wow.
that day turned into, just a big project that turned into
Awesome.
something, right? So you just never know how things are going to happen, how they're going to unfold. And that's why the more you put yourself out there in any sort of way, you're doing yourself a good service.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think the way that network for me, I think a lot of people think that LinkedIn and all these platforms, I think you get, but I've found I'm not promoting LinkedIn or anything, but like I think that LinkedIn has been very amazing, to meet
It's a
new
good
artists,
one.
you
Yeah.
really meet people and
Yep.
engaging in community there, especially in
Yes.
different like the Illustrators Guild and different artists that are part of these particular groups. Then you get familiar with them, and a lot of them have reached out to me. I've reached out to them in the past and whatnot, and it just become like a huge, like a network. It becomes
Yes.
very much so. I've been able to reach out to some of them when I needed help with something for spirit or whatever it is I'm doing. I've been able to extend my network to a few other friends too, and they say, "Oh yeah, I need somebody for this." I'm like, "Oh yeah, let me call this person." And man, the web is just so broad, and I think it's
Yes.
important to have that type of webbing attached to a lot of
Yes.
different people
Absolutely.
because you just never know who's going to call, and you never know who's going to need you, and or vice versa, maybe who you can connect together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so that's important. But before we go, Stephen, I want to ask you one last question: is what are your recommendations for students in the do's and don'ts of portfolios? First, we could start off with the don'ts. Like, what is something you tell students when they want to be character artists, character designers in their portfolio? What is the don'ts when you're reviewing portfolios?
Don't just have anime in there, right? It's just like, just really don't just have like one style. You have to, if you want to be a character designer and work in the animation industry, you got to be a chameleon. You got to have multiple styles and show that you can hit multiple styles, which means that you could do like a preschool style, that you could do an action adventure, that you could do more of a cartoony style. And showing that versatility is a major thing. So if you don't have that, I would say that's not an ideal portfolio. If you don't, if you have a portfolio that doesn't have, make sure that you have your email on there. I've come to, which is funny to say, but I've come across just different websites where there's no even email. Like, how am I supposed to get in contact with you? So make sure you have your email on there and not just a contact form, right? Have an actual email. Make sure you do put your resume on there just because it is a formality and they do just want to see that. Make sure that you don't have so many different varieties of stuff where I've seen portfolios where it shows characters, I'm scrolling, then it shows the props and then environments and then characters again and props and everything's all
Oh yeah,
jumbled together and mixed
yeah,
up in there.
yeah.
Just make sure that you categorize it, that you have maybe your character designs, your prop designs, your environment designs. Again, you don't have to do everything. I just focus on what you love. I just focus on character. That's all that's ever in my portfolio because I don't want to do environments. I don't want to draw vehicles. I don't want to do props. If you need characters, then I'm your guy to do that. But so put in your portfolio what you love. Don't put things in your portfolio that you don't love to do, because if you get that job, you're going to be miserable, and you're going to be swearing at your screen and drawing board the whole time through. So those are some major things with the portfolios. Just to be organized, find your focus again, where you want to go, and a portfolio for illustration is going to be different than a portfolio for animation. If you're trying to get a job in advertising and illustration work, art directors want to see consistency. They
Mhm.
want to know that every time they're going to get you. So if you have a portfolio that's all over the place and you're trying to get some magazine work or something like that, the art director is going to be confused and could be upset that all of a sudden you don't give them what they thought they saw in your portfolio. So you can have separate portfolios if you feel like, hey, I got a real strong style that I'm focusing my that on, and then for animation, just do it different. But those would be some major things I would recommend.
Awesome. That's so
Yeah.
great. And I listen, before we go, can you tell us where we can find you, where to locate you, how to get in touch with you, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram is Stephen with a PH, Stephen Silver 7. Someone else had my name, so I wasn't able to get just the name there, but you can find me there. And if you just again use my name, Stephen Silver with a PH on YouTube, you'll find me. I have a lot of videos on YouTube that you can see. And then my school, my online school is silverdrawingacademy.com, and you can find me there too. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate your time. I can't tell you how awesome this was to have you on here on our first ASC Online
My
interview session.
pleasure.
It was really cool talking to you, man. And again, it just yeah, I'm looking forward to our next one. Now, just to refresh everybody, so on next month we'll do a let's draw with you next month, like a drawing session with you next month.
Right.
So yeah, so stay tuned for that. We'll definitely put something together that we can just show a little bit of like quick techniques and stuff. Again, this quick tutorial, real quick little deals, and yeah, and share a little bit of your process and whatnot. So thank you again, Stephen. Really appreciate your time, and
My
we'll see you
pleasure.
guys on the next one.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Well, guys, we made it. Thanks again for watching. Thank you for supporting ASC. Make sure you guys like, share, and hit that notification button. Subscribe to our channel. Make sure you support us. We're going to be putting more content out like this, and a lot more artists, a lot more industry professionals going to be sharing some insights with you guys. Stay tuned for that. Make sure that you guys follow Stephen and all the social platforms that we'll be putting in the links below. Make sure you follow us at Artisan Social Club and visit our website at www.artisansocialclub.official. Stay tuned for more videos and see you on the next one. Peace.